10 million shadows. That's how many soldiers march under the banner of Song Jinwoo, the Shadow Monarch. Out of all those warriors, beasts, mages, and more, there are 14 top-tier shadows who truly stand out. Each one carries terrifying abilities and signature styles that make them legends in this colossal army. Here's a closer look at the strongest shadows in Jinwoo's ranks. Starting at number 14, there's the Ant Queen. Fans of the Jeju Island arc might recall that towering, chittering mother figure of the ant colony. In life, she was a monstrous creature, loaded with lethal purple poison. She mass-produced giant ants that effortlessly took down high-level hunters, and she was also responsible for birthing the king ant. Normally, a being that strong would be a nightmare on any battlefield. However, once extracted into Jinwoo's legion, the Ant Queen couldn't pop out new ants anymore because she no longer had a real body. She still had potent poison, but her primary advantage was gone. On top of that, she started trying to command the other ant shadows Jinwoo had. That obviously didn't go over well, so Jinwoo decided to cancel the extraction. She ended up more of a disappointment than an asset, so she's always considered a neat concept that just didn't pan out once turned into a shadow. Moving on to number 13, Min Byung-gu. He wasn't part of the Legion for long, but deserves mention for what he could have become. He was an S-rank healer who could mend lethal injuries in seconds and reverse life-threatening poisons without breaking a sweat. Jinwoo temporarily extracted him after the Battle of the Ant King, basically saving Cha Hae-in's life. Once that was done, Jinwoo honored the healer's wishes and allowed him to rest in peace. If he had stayed as a permanent shadow, he would have been a serious game changer. Combat medics are hard to come by, especially those who can do large-scale healing on the fly. Even if he started out as a mid-tier shadow, the leveling system of the Shadow Monarch could have turned him into an elite knight, or maybe even a general eventually. Number 12 is Colossal, the Shadow Wyvern. This flying beast was extracted from a boss in the Demon Castle named Kailen, though Jinwoo forgot that original name and went with Colossal. Even though it's unclear how destructive Colossal could be in actual combat, there's never really a scene where it's raining down fire on enemies. The flight advantage is priceless. Nothing beats having a mount that can cross continents, bypass other armies, and pull Jinwoo out of danger at any moment. While Kaisel's battle potential might match high-level knight or elite knight shadows, the main draw is its mobility. Whether it's surveying a massive battlefield, rushing to a hot zone, or evacuating important allies, Colossal is a crucial piece of the army's strategy. If Colossal were to get in a real fight, the outcome might depend on how well it can use that flying advantage. Number 11 is Tank, the Big Shadow Bear. Originally a monstrous ice bear found in a frigid red gate, Tank became one of the best frontline bruisers in Jinwoo's forces. This beast is all about ferocious physical power, charging in, mauling enemies, and ripping them apart. That might sound basic, but sheer brute force is a big deal, especially once shadows start leveling up. Tank has become cunning enough to pull off flanking maneuvers and coordinate attacks with shadows like Iron. It's not just a wild beast anymore. It's a capable fighter in group battles and can deal with A-rank threats. In a one-on-one situation with a poisonous foe like the Ant Queen, Tank might struggle, but the high durability of Knight Grade or Elite Knight Grade shadows can be tough to overcome. It's not complicated, but it's effective, which is sometimes the perfect fit for a big shadow army. Number 10 belongs to the Giants. These colossal humanoid creatures spilled out of a massive gate in Japan and nearly destroyed the entire city. Each one was powerful enough to trouble S-rank hunters, and once Jinwoo shadow extracted them, they became some of the most frightening shock troopers around. The durability and speed they have for their size is insane, making them unstoppable if left unchecked. They can flatten entire blocks, which is a great morale breaker on the battlefield. Their downfall is that huge targets can be vulnerable to fast or magically adept opponents. Yet in direct combat, few can handle a rampaging horde of giants. They're definitely more than just mid-tier shadows, thanks to their potential to take down top hunters. At number 9, there's the unnamed Titan from the later chapters. He was part of a race of rocky Titan beings that basically devour minerals and had the gall to try invading Earth, only to realize Jinwoo was the reigning god of the block. Unfortunately for him, he got zapped by Bellion almost immediately. However, once turned into a shadow, the Titan shows up again under Jinwoo's command, ready to fight in that final war scenario. Titans can condense their bodies into slightly smaller forms to unleash full power. Only the strongest among them can do that. So from the get-go, that means he's on par with the scariest elites in the Shadow Legion. Sliding into number 8 is Iron, formerly Kim Chul, the buff, armor-wearing maniac from the Red Gate. Iron is the comedic relief of the army, always pounding his chest or raring to brawl. Early in the story, he wasn't that fearsome, just a renamed A-rank hunter who liked tanking hits. But after Jinwoo's repeated upgrades, Iron steadily became an elite knight grade shadow. He's basically the perfect storm of raw strength, durability, and unpredictability. He also has that signature skill, Shout of Provocation, which forces weaker enemies to turn their attention to him and go berserk. His shortcoming? He's straightforward. No fancy magic, no flight, no venom, just raw tanking and whacking. That's enough to crush weaker foes, but the bigger fish on this list can outmaneuver or outspell him. Number 7 is Greed, the shadow extracted from Huang Dongsu. Huang Dongsu was a nasty piece of work in life, an S-rank hunter who tortured Jinwoo's friend and basically forced Jinwoo to end him. When turned into a shadow, Greed popped out at general grade, meaning he started out with power on par with top-tier S-rank hunters or stronger. The biggest feat we got to see from Greed was busting out of the Frost Monarch's ice prison, which was no joke. The only bummer is there wasn't a lot of screen time for him, so the full arsenal of his potential remains a mystery. But being a general grade right from the get-go is enough to place him above elite knight guys like Iron or Tusk, before Tusk leveled up anyway. Number 6 is Tusk, the high orc shaman boss turned unstoppable magic artillery. When Jinwoo first extracted him, Tusk was elite knight grade, meaning he could fry waves of lesser demons with a single fire spell. Over time, once Jinwoo rose to full Shadow Monarch powers, Tusk got bumped up to general grade, and that's where things get insane. He's got a buffet of spells and buffs labeled as him of this or him of that. Everything from protective shields and healing boosts to debilitating curses that cause blindness, agony, or stamina drain. He can even enlarge himself to match the size of a giant if needed. But the real nuke in Tusk's arsenal is the Hymn of the Fire Dragon, especially when combined with the Orb of Avarice. That monstrous beam of flame disintegrates armies of demons, roasts giants, and can hold its own even against some nasty Monarch-level threats. Number 5 is Egis, the iconic red-armored knight, who once tested Jinwoo in an early dungeon. Egis later turned out to be an ancient servant of Ashbourne, the original Shadow Monarch. Initially, his rank appeared as knight grade, which might trick people into thinking he was no big deal. But the moment Jinwoo fully inherited the Shadow Monarch's powers, it was revealed that Egis' real rank is martial grade. This means national level hunter strength, or maybe even edging close to a monarch's domain. Egis is basically a master swordsman, unbelievably quick, skilled, and able to channel some telekinetic powers. He also wields the Demon King's longsword, boosting his damage by hundreds of points and unleashing lightning-infused slashes that can tear through hordes in a flash. Egis famously held off the Frost Monarch for a bit, and was scary enough to make even a being that's basically an ice demigod be cautious. His speed and technique are top-notch, and that's before factoring in the possibility of synergy with other shadows. Number 4 belongs to Baron, better known as the Demon King. Some adaptations don't highlight him as heavily, but he's a big deal in the Demon Castle arc. Jinwoo eventually kills him and attempts to extract him. Now, depending on the iteration, Baron's shadow might not get a ton of spotlight, but if it did, it would be general or even martial grade. As Demon Castle's boss, Baron wielded lightning-like powers that could absolutely devastate entire teams of strong hunters. If his extraction succeeded the way some fans theorize, he'd probably rank in the same ballpark as Tusk, or maybe even higher. Number 3 is Beru, the once feared Ant King of Jeju Island. From the moment he was extracted, he stomped around as a general grade shadow and could wipe out entire armies solo. Even early on, Beru was so strong he nearly obliterated top-tier S-rank hunters, and he has insane speed. The second he upgraded to martial grade, he basically became unstoppable among the standard shadows. He's a master of flight, can enlarge or shrink his body, has claws that can tear through steel, and uses a venom that paralyzes his prey in seconds. Gluttony is another big perk. Beru can absorb skills from those he devours, which gets pretty broken the longer he fights. Over the course of the story, Beru fought 2 monarchs, Terat, the Monarch of Steel, and Rakan, the Monarch of Fangs, alongside other top shadows. He also faced down the Insect Queen without flinching. Number 2 is Kamish, the legendary dragon that ravaged the American West Coast. Now this is tricky because Kamish's shadow extraction famously failed in the main story, but hypothetically, if it had worked, we're talking about a colossal near-cataclysmic beast that took a combined might of multiple S-rank hunters to kill. Kamish torched hundreds of top fighters. The survivors like Thomas Andre barely pulled through. Even in death, Kamish left behind a huge chunk of power that Jinwoo turned into a runic stone, with unstoppable flames, the intangible dragon fear that paralyzes enemies, and scales tougher than any armor. A Shadow Kamish would stand toe-to-toe with monarchs. He'd likely be martial grade or borderline grand martial grade. Finally, sitting at number 1 is Bellion, Ashbourne's former right-hand man and the Grand Marshal of the entire Shadow Army. He fought side by side with Beru against the Monarch of Steel, and didn't break a shadowy sweat doing it. Bellion wields a massive sword that can morph into a whip, which absolutely demolishes speedsters like Beru. Despite his huge physique, Bellion moves at blinding speeds. He can slice apart giant titans and top-tier threats with an effortless flick. There's simply no other shadow in the entire story that competes with his raw might and experience. He's been in countless wars, and serves the original Shadow Monarch Ashbourne from ancient times. So yeah, this dude is basically unstoppable. So that's the big rundown of the 14 monstrous shadows that stand above the rest in Song Jinwoo's massive 10 million strong legion. If these guys were lined up on a battlefield, it's not even fair for whoever's on the other side. They're basically unstoppable once Jinwoo sets them loose. So that's it for this video. If you liked it, you can watch this other cool video that's appearing on your screen. Click on it to see. Go ahead, click it.